What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Aaron B, and welcome back to Tacos and Touchdown Live. It is Texas College Football Roundup Trip Preview, Episode 2, and I got managing editor of Aggies Wire, Cameron Ohnysty. I said your last name
You said my last name perfectly. Congratulations.
Man, I was working on that yesterday.
You're good, man. You should see how people butcher it sometimes. Pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm a name butcher, so
that's good, man. You
got on YouTube to pronounce this. Yes, sir. But I appreciate you for being on the show. We're going to be talking about some A&M football. Mm-hmm. I know there's a lot to talk about. We were just talking about before we got on the show, so this will be a great show today. So my first question to you is, if you could create a Mount Rushmore of A&M greats or coaches, who would you choose to feature on it?
So I think a lot of Aggies would agree that Johnny Manziel would go on there mainly and the thing about it is, like, he played 2 years, so a lot of older Aggies would probably say, I don't know if he really deserves that, because he didn't stay all 4 years. He didn't give as much as a guy like Dat Nguyen, who Dat Nguyen is one of the greatest players to ever come through Texas A&M, still is around in some capacity with the program, and was pretty much the leader of the wrecking crew in the 90s or late 90s. He's on there along with his head coach R.C. Slocum, who, in my opinion, is the most successful coach of any sport at A&M to come through, and still to this day is the most successful football coach. But I would include Johnny Manziel, mainly because, not just because he won the Heisman, he was his second winner. He also joins John David Crow, who I would put up there as well as kind of the four-headed, because he was the first Heisman winner for the program to get recognition back in the, I believe, Bear Bryant days. But yeah, Manziel, a lot of money was raised, a lot of prestige was given to A&M just after in the 2012 and 2013 season. I remember I was in college during that time, and this kid just A&M became a household name, and that wasn't the case for years. It's mainly people started paying attention to A&M when the Texas game was around. Texas A&M is Texas' little brother, and maybe we can upset Texas this year. That was, and I'll tell you, my dad is an 82 grad. I myself didn't go to A&M. I went to Iowa State University, but I've been surrounded by the program my entire life. But he's told me, he said, for years, even when we were there, we had some good teams, but at the end of the year, we got to beat Texas. That was the main goal. But then in the late 90s, they started to become championship contending program under Slocum. But then you get to the 2000s and some bad hires, some transitions. It kind of gets back to that place of, let's just beat the rival at the end of the year. Let's try to beat Oklahoma if we can. But after Johnny Manziel came, success came, finishing 11-2 on the year, getting the Cotton Bowl, destroying Oklahoma. And then I think they're a top 5 preseason team that next year. And then every year since, and even through Sumlin and Jimbo Fisher, no matter their failures and how they didn't, reach the heights that Aggie fans had for them, or a lot of them thought at least a playoff appearance. Now, Fisher got close in the 2020 season, but they've been recruiting at a high level ever since. I mean, top 10 after top 10 recruiting class. That's where that prestige comes from with Manziel recruits who, again, I'm 30 years old, and see, these are 17, 8-year-old kids. They know all about Johnny Manziel. So that's the thing. They still know, that's where Johnny Manziel went to college. So I'm at least going to give him a look. So those 4 guys, R.C. Slocum, Dat Nguyen, Johnny Manziel, and John David Crow, the 4 guys I would put up there. Now, there's a lot of other great athletes who've come here. Lester Holtz, Lester Hayes. Lester Hayes is another guy who older Aggies football fans know. There's a lot of great AC Law basketball. There's a ton of great athletes that have come through Texas A&M in every sport, but those are the 4 guys I always go with. So
that's definitely a great list. And then when you think of Manziel, when you said 30, I'm like, man, it just felt like it was like yesterday watching Johnny Manziel play on a Saturday. And I'm with you. I'm 33, so
we're a little older. So it was nuts. And I mean, it was pay-per-view, man. It was like, I would pay to watch those games if that was the case. Like, that's and I remember those distinctly, even in the 2013 season, where the defense was horrific. It was just Manziel running around, making play after play, winning 31-30 games. And it was just good football. And that's the thing. Like, I said, well, we're not that good, but we can we can win any game because he's throwing the ball. So yeah.
That's one thing. Like, you didn't even have to be an A&M fan just to you wanted to lock in. Yeah,
it was a great time in college football. I mean,
absolutely. So my next question. So you are a managing editor. What inspired you to become a sports writer? And was there any particular person that motivates you to pursue that?
So for years, I was doing like anybody in their mid-20s, the basic, business jobs. I was kind of going job to job. I was kind of trying on different careers. At one point, I got so bored with what I was doing previously, I started moving furniture for a living for a little bit. And then I was doing a lot of side gigs just to kind of, keep things consistent and really try to find out what the heck I was actually good at. I'd always been a good writer. And that was the thing my parents specifically told me: go into something where it's either reporting or creative writing or something. I mean, find something that you're going to stick with for a long time. And I remember I was working at a grocery store actually during COVID, because I was job transitioning when COVID started, and I was working in a managerial position. And I came home one day, and a guy I kind of knew through some free sports writing gigs had an opportunity with USA Today, with Aggies Wire, which was a new site. Is brand new. They were trying to cover A&M for years, didn't have the funding yet. A&M just started growing and growing consistently throughout the years, and they needed more coverage. So I hopped on there as a contributor about 3 to 4 years ago and worked my way up ever since. And my dad specifically, who was, a global manager with John Deere for years. So he had a pretty prestigious job. And I always thought, well, is he going to be that impressed with this? Well, no, he said, you need to follow something that you're extremely passionate about, do it with all your, work your butt off at it. And so I'm where I'm at now. And this is the best job I've ever had. And I can't really think of anything else I would do, to be honest. But
it's definitely not a bad gig to talk about sports and stuff and then get paid for it.
That's like the dream. And that's the thing. I wake up every day going, I can do this every day. I never get bored. Yeah. And I get paid for it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Texas sports will keep you busy. So I know you're never a day where it's like, oh, what am I going to talk about today? Because you can just look on the TV.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's always the case. There's literally never a break in news, which is nice. But especially now when we're going from baseball season to football off season to then football season, there's no really break in between, which I love, because sometimes some programs, they only are really one type of sports school. So you're going to be covering that the entire time. And that's not the case with A&M. It just keeps going and going and going. So, yeah.
Good. Because y'all cover basketball as well, too.
We cover basketball as well, which, going to the tournament last year was very exciting. Finally getting past the round of 64 was great. And Buzz Williams is one of those coaches that, like Mike Elko, like a couple other like new head coach Michael Earlier they just hired, or baseball head coach Michael Earlier just hired. These guys embody A&M. They love A&M. They embrace the culture of A&M, and anybody, no matter the graduating class you can really tell, like, these are the right guys. Like, they've built something here where these are guys that, they will have their ups and downs, but they're going to keep improving every year. And so, yeah, it's fun to cover, and they're all great guys to talk to for overall. So
it seemed like kind of like the lunch pail type coaches that are like, just go handle their business. They do the media stuff, because there's some coaches that they'll admit they can't stand talking to the media and stuff. They're just like, do I gotta be here?
Buzz Williams especially, he very philosophical guy, will never not sit down and give you some piece of advice about life or something like that. And it's interesting. It's sometimes fans will be like, less talk, more results. But at the same time, you got to know, like, this is his process. This is how he coaches. This is how he gets through to players, because every coach has their different idea of what success is. And he's he's a guy who really any fan base likes to listen to, especially after post games, because he always has a specific reason why things happened instead of, we just didn't do well, Yeah, exactly. So yeah, for a reporter, it's never dull. I'll say that.
Hey, that's the best part.
That's the best part. Yeah.
So. Yeah, good. You don't have to fluff something up. He'll at least be giving you something to talk about.
Oh yeah, because that's being creative is tough enough. So I mean, to take boring words and turn them into something interesting is never fun.
But, yeah, you gotta find some. You definitely, for sure. Yeah. So, speaking of coaches, so following the dismissal of Jimbo Fisher as the head coach, what was your initial impression when they hired a former defensive coordinator and Duke head coach Mike Elko as our new head coach, football coach?
So I loved it. I was the first one to say that outside of guys like Kalen DeBoer, who ended up at Alabama, and a couple other big, kind of splashy names, which personally we threw through the grapevine, those weren't really options at the time. Outside of the crazy hiring process that almost sent Mark Stoops to A&M at one point. I don't know if you know that when that happened, where there's like a 2-hour thing where fans were upset, and basically the rumor is that through the Texas Aggies message board that there was so much grief and so much anger towards that potential hire that they kind of pushed off. Now there's other things that come into that, but the fact that Mark Stoops with former AD Ross Bjork was the first candidate is kind of odd to me, because in my opinion, if it would have been any other AD, I think Mike Elko would have been the first call, because when it comes to A&M, yes, they have the funds and the notoriety to get the type of splashy head coach. They've done that in the past. And Jimbo was that splash hire, but mainly Jimbo left because he wasn't getting what he wanted at Florida State. Plus, he wanted to coach in the SEC, which all these coaches want to do. A&M had an opening, so that was a sure thing for him. But with Elko, and I said this previously with guys like Buzz Williams, he loves A&M. He loves everything about A&M. And in his first off season so far, he's been at every A&M function. He's talked to every high school coach, something that Jimbo Fisher did not do a lot of the time. He's not beloved by Texas football head coaches, which is, that you can't get anything done in recruiting here if you're not friendly with those guys and have good relationships with them. And so when we saw that going through, and when the baseball season started, I could honestly say that Elko was at 20 plus home games, to be honest with you. He was just there enjoying it. That guy loves A&M. He always has, but that's not why he got hired. Why he got hired is because when you look back at A&M back in, I think it was 2018 to 2021, when he was defensive coordinator, this was the best assistant coach they had in a long time. Best assistant coach they had under Jimbo Fisher, for sure. This was is still one of the best defensive coordinators. Any coach will tell you they never want to play Mike Elko. They do not know how to prepare for him. And we saw that a little bit with Duke over the last 2 years. I think last year they beat Clemson. That was a pretty big win. And the way that he uses stack defenses and loads up certain sides of the defense where you're just confused looking on the right. There's 3 guys there and there's only 2 guys, and you're going, okay, what the hell do we do here? Do we do short pass? Do we just throw a bomb? And that's the kind of stuff he did at A&M, especially in the 21 season when A&M beat Alabama in one of their biggest wins. It was because he just constantly sent pressure in a variety of ways to get Bryce Young off kilter the entire game. And Aggie fans, when he left, I'll be honest, when I started covering A&M professionally in 2022 for the 22 season, people were still talking about how they missed Elko. I mean, they did, just the defensive coordinator, which doesn't usually happen. It's these guys move on, but they're like, oh, well, I don't know if we're going to be as good anymore. I just don't know if we're going to have that type of mentality. And that's the thing. Since he's been here, we've only seen a small portion of it in spring football. But at the same time, you're dealing with spring football where, you're not going to see as much, especially with the offense, you're not really going to see any splash plays. It's just going to be vanilla. With defense, you saw a little bit of what you're going to get this year, but it's the way he's recruited. And he did that at A&M. A couple of the guys who got drafted in the 24 draft, Edgerton Cooper, linebacker Edgerton Cooper, and McKinley Jackson, these were both recruits of Mike Elko. Now, were they coached by Mike Elko their last 2 seasons? No. But I remember when he came back, it was all hugs and love and, thanks. And, that's what you're getting. You're getting a guy who is going to come into this program. He's going to develop every one of these 5-star guys, 4 or 5-star guys, not just collect them. And that's the thing that Jimbo Fisher did. And I could finally say that out loud. Like, he was collecting these guys and they weren't really doing much. And again, they go to other programs and some do more, some do less. I don't know if that's a personal thing with some of those guys, but you just weren't getting the talent that you saw on tape, on the field. And that's been a big issue. And I have no doubt that the guys that they are getting in the 25 class, for example, these are super talented players, especially in the defensive back group, some pass rushers and offensive linemen. Because of the coaching staff he's hired as well, these are developmental coaches. These are guys who are going to get you to the draft, hopefully, but you're going to go as a player who, when a scout watches you, they go, well, that guy's super productive. I don't have a problem with his mentality. I don't think he's going to be an issue at all. Like, that's what you're going to get from Elko as a developmental coach. But overall, what I do love the most is that you're getting a guy who, yes, he will be in charge of the defense with new defensive coordinator Jay Bateman, but he's not going to have any say in the offense. And biggest problem with Jimbo Fisher was he couldn't give that up. And obviously, Elko's not an offensive coach, but he's handed the reins off to new offensive coordinator Colin Klein. He said, I saw what you did at Kansas State. I know what you can do here. Here you go. I have no say in it. And that's a beautiful thing to me, because I can't tell you how many times we've had to write about, is Jimbo Fisher going to give up the offense? For 2 years of my life. So that's done. We could just focus on something else. But overall, I think he's going to be fantastic for this program. We have to see what happens on the field. We have to see what happens this season and the 25 season, really give him a grade overall. But expectations are high, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to Elko, when I was watching some tape on, when he was at Duke, I seen a guy that was, like you were saying, he's a teacher. And when you think of Jimbo, he was kind of like, I would get all these recruits, but the turnover ratio, everybody would be gone the next year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of nuts. Some of them make sense. And a guy like Evan Stewart, for example, good for him. I hope he does very well at Oregon. Like, I don't have a problem with that. But also, we were kind of talking about when he left, he just doesn't want to be at A&M anymore. He dealt with some injuries, and all players do, and he wasn't on the field as much. Now, I will never know until probably this season if Evan Stewart is truly that 5-star number 1 receiver, first-round pick guy. If he is, that's fantastic. Now, if he's not, I can't really blame A&M for that. Some of these guys, they just don't work out. But there's a number of guys who specifically, and I mentioned Edgerton Cooper, that Jimbo doesn't get credit for that, because I would give credit to former defense coordinator DJ Durkin, who's also served as a linebacker coach last year, who really developed Edgerton Cooper. And that's the thing about some of these coaches. I think the head coaches get a ton of credit for A, B, and C, but some of those assistants, especially coordinators and even position coaches, they're the ones that are taking guys under their wing and saying, look, if you want to be a 1st or 2nd round pick, do this, and this coming season, and that'll happen for you. And so Elko's also got a lot of those guys. Adam Cushing is their new O-line coach. A&M's offensive line was atrocious last year. He's now getting more into I wouldn't say it's like a blue-collar scheme. It just block the man in front of you, essentially. Don't worry about these complex spacing issues and all that. And, adding more size there. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be perfect, but I know they're going to be improved. And then a ton of and obviously Colin Klein, who, had this historic playing career, he has a great resume at Kansas State of, having one of the more complex offenses that puts a lot of defenses, in a bind sometimes, because the quarterback's legs as well as his arms are a big part of that offense. And so I think we're going to see more improvement there as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. When his offense is kind of like how he played at Kansas State.
Yeah,
that's how I put the description.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough football. I mean, we'll see how reminiscent it is, but I don't know if it's going to be exact, but it'll be interesting to watch. So.
Yes, it's gonna give defense headaches, and the other thing, it's blue collar Kansas State football. That's how I'm
because again, they can't recruit like the 5-star guys, so you have to play that way. So when you translate it, it's going to be interesting when you have more talent on the field, how it will actually look with faster, bigger guys. So,
absolutely. So, going into the rival now, after 13 years, the A&M Texas rivalry game is back at Kyle Field this year. How excited are you for this game? And what do you think how Aggies going to match up against the Longhorns?
I mean, I'm excited. We'll see if they let me in as media, because every media person on the planet, and including, probably soccer media or something, is going to go, yeah, I want to go to that game. So I don't watch football, but I want to go to that game. I mean, the tickets prices right now are outrageous. So I would guess they're going to go down. But I'm excited because I can remember that rivalry. I mean, I remember, 20 years back watching with my dad, watching at my grandparents' house on a small TV during Thanksgiving. And that was the one game that, everybody's eyes, bolted to, because there would be seasons where Texas would be, 9-3, 10-2. A&M would slog in there with 6 or 7 wins. And it would just be a great game to watch because A&M gave their all every time they played Texas. And we mentioned that earlier in the pod, that was kind of their Super Bowl every year. Now it's going to be very interesting because I told you pre-show, Texas is getting a lot of praise by outside media, and they should. They just went to a playoff. They've got Quinn Ewers returning. They've got one of the best offensive linemen in Kelvin Banks. They've got a great, very fast wide receiver, blah, blah, blah. They've got all of it. And we've talked about A&M's defense a little bit, and that's going to be the strength of this team. We're talking about, one of the best offensive lines. We're talking littered with 5-star talent. We're talking about an improved secondary that was horrible last season. Elko went in the transfer portal and got 20-plus players and got, I think, 5 or 6 or 7 defensive backs. And these are all taller guys. These are all faster guys. These are all aggressive play style guys that I think are going to match up well in the SEC, where, last season, teams like Alabama, Ole Miss just exposed A&M because of the lack of size on the boundary and just put bigger receivers out there to throw the ball over them. So I think that going into that matchup, again, I don't know what's going to happen this season, but best case scenario, and it does make a little sense no matter what Texas fans want to say that A&M is going to do this or this, and they think they're going to go undefeated. They have a very tough schedule. They play Michigan and Georgia this season. A&M's schedule is tough, not tougher, but it's tough-ish. But they avoid teams like Alabama and Ole Miss this year. So yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think they can match up each other defensively, or A&M can match up with their offense enough to the point where they can keep it close. And I think that pass rush could get to Quinn Ewers enough to keep it a low-scoring 20-17 type game. But again, I don't know how both of these offenses are going to look because, as we know, a lot of teams, they have a great season. They have all the expectations. They come in and they just look slower and they just don't look as efficient. And it's kind of a new slate for A&M. So I don't know what they're going to look like on offense 100% because we just haven't seen it yet.
So when it comes to the, outside the UT game, what's another game like that's catching your eye?
So I would say 2 of them. You got the schedule up here. So yeah, I would go a little up, and you look at this. I think it's the September 14th matchup against Florida. I've never gone to a game at Florida. I know a couple Aggie media guys who have in the past. I do want to go one day, but I'd probably die of heat stroke. So I don't know about that. It is apparently horrific. It's horrific apparently in September. And so that, Florida is one of those teams, they are destined to suck apparently by everybody's standards. But when I kind of look at the roster, yeah, they have all these woes and we can't recruit anybody. But they still have Graham Mertz, quarterback, and they've got a pretty decent offense. And they are used to playing in that type of heat every year and humidity. And I'm not saying A&M isn't, because they are in Texas where it gets unhumanly hot sometimes. So that is a game that I'm a little worried about because it is so early after, we'll see how Notre Dame. And I mean, I could say Notre Dame, but I don't say Notre Dame mainly because I don't know how Notre Dame's going to look offensively. I don't know how healthy Riley Leonard is at quarterback for them. I know how good they are defensively, but that's one of those really early games that, for example, Alabama plays every year with a trouncing opponent, and then that opponent actually ends up having a pretty good season. I don't know if that's as meaningful. I do know, well, it's meaningful, but I don't know if that's the type of game where if they win it, then they're destined to go 5-0 or 6-0. It's just one of those weird openers. But yeah, Florida, and then I would say Missouri, which I believe is the first October game. Yeah, on October 5th. That's an 11 a.m. kickoff. That is a Missouri offense that could be lethal with Brady Cook and Luther Burden. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much they're gonna, how they're gonna look defensively because they did lose some guys. But I do know that they're going to be a high octane passing offense, and that time just kind of scares me because 11 a.m. kickoffs have not been good for A&M over the years. It's not good for really any team, mainly because of the heat, and these guys are just not 100% ready to play. But I would say overall, those are the two. Yeah, you can include Notre Dame, but those are the two games before Texas that I would say they should be a little worried about. So.
Yeah, those are some underrated games that I know that doesn't get notoriety like with the Florida game because people's expectation for Florida is real low. But when it comes to Missouri, they don't have like the secondary guys they had this last year, but that offense is looking still really nice.
because they lost, I think, one of their top corners to the draft. I believe that. So they did lose some talent. They lost some speed on defense. So I don't know if they're going to be one of those teams where it's a race to 40 type of teams, but yeah, it goes back to A&M's offense. It's like, is A&M's offense going to be a consistent run it down your throat type of team that they can really bully anybody? And I think Bud Elliott of CBS Sports made a good point, is that receiving core going to scare anybody? And that's one of the biggest things I've written about before is that they have guys in the receiving core that Connor Weigman at quarterback is a great quarterback. Like, that guy can hit his target at a consistent rate, but are those guys going to show up when needed, when the game is close? And so far they haven't had the opportunity to do that yet, but yeah, it's going to be interesting but I think by that time we'll know how good Missouri is by that kickoff. So.
Yeah, when you think Missouri, they could be really good or they could have a down season. So
yeah, that's kind of where they are right now. It's kind of weird because like Florida, they get zero respect, which is kind of weird. I'm like, you're really setting up for them to upset a couple teams, but you're right. Yeah, Missouri, because of like recruiting success and all that, they're just really hyped up. But I mean, I guess when you have, and it kind of takes me back, Brady Cook is not Johnny Manziel and Luther Burden is not Mike Evans, but it does remind me back when they were going into that 2013 season, that could be what Missouri looks like in a way. I don't know if their defense is going to be that bad, but that connection was so lethal that I remember, I think Mike Evans had like 200 something yards against Alabama in that game. Yeah, it was nuts. Yeah, but that was just one of the greatest combinations in college football. And we could see that because those guys, I think, are good enough to be that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that definitely should be a good game. So now we're getting into the recruiting part. So when it comes to, y'all had 28 transfers come in this year. Mm-hmm. What's two transfers that are catching your eye and you think will make an immediate impact this year?
So an immediate impact, I don't know if Terry Bussey. So Terry Bussey, and I don't know if you know Terry Bussey, who's the number one athlete in the 25 class. Yeah. That he was the big get for Elko because he wasn't officially signed. He was I think LSU was trying to flip him at that time. But it's an interesting list. But yeah, he's a guy who Elko has said a couple times just this offseason that we don't know how we're going to use him, but he's going to be a cornerback to start. It's one of the most athletic, faster players that can really play, kind of like Bryce Anderson, A&M starting safety. Anderson was a quarterback like Terry Bussey and so they can translate to defense pretty quickly. But yeah, I think he has the ability to play excuse me, he has the ability to play either cornerback or potentially like slot wide receiver. He's just that good. It's just we don't know how fast he's gonna, get acclimated to the college football landscape. We haven't heard a ton out of outside of when Elko's mentioned him a couple times. We will get more from him during fall camp during those first couple weeks. What position group he's working with. But yeah, you kind of see on the screen, there's guys like Dylan Evans is another one, and then Tristan Jernigan, and even Solomon Williams. These are both defensive linemen that are just so talented that I mean they could work their way into the rotation just to quell some starters. But yeah, Tristan Jernigan is one of the linebackers. He was also one of Elko's late signees. I think Alabama was trying to flip in before Nick Saban left. But yeah, this class is extremely talented. They're kind of ahead of their years. So there's a number of guys that I think could find their way in the field, especially if there's injuries across the defense, across the offensive line. A guy like Ashton Funk, like you see there, he's a tackle prospect, not prospect now, but he's a young tackle who has a ton of size, very athletic. But there's a number of very talented guys that like I said, they could see some playing time early. But I would say Bussy, and I think a lot of people would agree, Bussy is the guy who we're really waiting to see how he looks, especially on defense, because the nickel corner spot, it's probably going to be taken by Jaden Hill, who's a transfer from Florida. But at the same time, Bussy could compete with Hill just based on talent alone. So that'll be a very interesting storyline.
So, when it comes to Bussy, I think that'd be like if any of the freshmen are coming in, I think he has the chance. And like you're saying, injuries could happen. Hopefully, you never want to wish any injuries on anybody.
Yeah, we dealt with that a lot last season. So,
but just there could be some opportunities. Like there could be a game where y'all beating the team by 20 or something like that.
And you just kind of throw them in and see what you got. Yeah. And that's the thing. Last offseason during camp, Javon Thomas, who was a freshman corner, granted, he had his ups and downs. He didn't play a lot, but he was making a lot of noise in camp. So that's the thing. A&M's had a lot of cornerbacks who've come in and kind of make some noise preseason. So I think he could be one of those guys, definitely. Just because, again, sometimes they're not caught up with the playbook and they're not completely acclimated, but they're just so good that you don't know how to keep them off the field. And that's kind of the case with Bussy.
So my next question is, I had Max Johnson. He transferred to North Carolina. Mm-hmm. You got Connor. Is it Wingman?
Wingman.
He's got the full reign at the quarterback. How do you think he'll be in Coach Klein's offense?
So it's going to be interesting because Klein's offense is very motion heavy. It's a run heavy offense. We've been talking about for a while that the run game has to be better. It was pretty bad. It was actually one of the worst running games in the country last season. And that mainly had to do with the fact that A&M just couldn't block anybody in front of them. But they have very talented backs. They're very deep at the running back spot. And they have a couple guys, including Ruben Owens, who's going to his sophomore year. It's a very athletic, almost wide receiver type back. I think he's 5'11", 6'1", 6'1". I mean, one of those taller, Le'Veon Bell type guys, just more athletic. And so I think he's going to be a staple in the offense, especially in the passing game. We're talking short passes, getting him involved in the intermediate game. But it's going to be interesting because I think a lot of people, they look at Klein's offense, which is it's the use of, like I said, motion pre-snap, and the use of the tight ends is everything in that offense. That's why they've been recruiting tight ends at a high level, and that's why they got guys like Trey Watson from the transfer portal to come here, because he knows that he watched Kansas State's offense, and those guys eat. Those guys get their catches. Those guys are in the seam exposing smaller corners, and so I think that's going to make Weigman's life a lot easier. But the question is, are they going to run him a lot? Because he's coming off of a broken bone in his foot. And I don't know if you want to beat him up, to start the season to do that. So I would think that, the first couple of games, especially against Notre Dame, I think it's going to be a straightforward, try to run the ball efficiently. get the short pass, take a shot every once in a while type of offense just to get these guys going. But if Weigman looks comfortable and he looks healthy, he's gained weight this offseason. He's a bigger guy now. I think he's got more muscle on him just to kind of protect his body, especially his lower body. So if he's okay with it, we could see I'm missing the quarterback's name from Kansas State last year. Will Howard, right? Yeah. So he who's at Ohio State now. Yeah. So he's that's the type of offense you could see. Both of them are now bigger. He's a bigger guy. Weigman's getting there. A lot of designed runs, but I think they're going to keep those shelled away until like opportunities come and Weigman feels okay with it. But I think he'll be much better. I think he's an efficient quarterback. He's a guy with great accuracy, great timing. He gets the ball out quickly. Immaculate touch. I mean, that's one of the reasons why he's the number one quarterback for the 25 class for a number of reasons, because the guy just hits his targets and he doesn't have the, arm strength of Trevor Lawrence, but we don't know. Maybe he could get there. I just don't know. We've only seen a small sample size of Weigman. He was injured after 4 games, but he had, one of the more historic outings to start the year and was passing the ball all over the place. I just don't know how open the offense is going to be. But I think by the first half of Notre Dame, we'll really see what this offense looks like. But I think he'll be fine, just barring injury, knock on wood, So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I see more like y'all gonna run the ball a little bit more in like the first half of the season, and kind of like you more adjusting until
just adjust. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Just adjust. They've got to run the ball better because they were so one-dimensional to the point where defenses were laughing at them at some point. They're like, we're just gonna look. They're just gonna, throw a quick pass. They're gonna try to run it up the middle, and you virtually have zero offense. You're basically just trying to play hero ball, and that happened a couple times last year with Max Johnson. And it's pretty bad to watch. It's just you gotta set the tone early, and that's what they're gonna try to do. That was something that Fisher did well in the 2020 season with Kellen Mond at quarterback. They ran the ball better than anybody. And, Kellen was kind of the same, they're not the same quarterback, but very similar and just, accurate, get the ball out quickly. And I think that's what they want to do. Every team, I think, wants to do that outside of, Lincoln Riley. But to be honest, they just want to establish the offense, get things into a comfortable area where you feel safe and you feel like you can start to take shots late, and they've got the guys to do it. It's going to be interesting how, especially the O-line acclimates and how it looks and how everything gels, I would say. So,
yeah. Well, the good thing is the offensive line is going to be more of a blue, like you're saying, a blue collar type of offensive scheme. So it's not going to be super complex. So maybe you'll see an improvement when it comes to the offensive line.
Yeah, and there's going to be shifts around the offensive line. I believe, guys like a guy like Chase Besantis, who was a borderline 5-star prospect, he played at right tackle for much of the season. Now there's talk of him going to one of the guard positions. Amaje Reed, transfer from Kansas, he's one of the best run blockers in the country last year. He's coming in. He probably deserves and probably is going to earn a starting spot at one of the guard spots to replace Layden Robinson, who got drafted. So they've got the hosses, they've got the big guys and the talent there to get it done. It's just, I think it's a lot of coaching and getting these guys to get in a rhythm, and that's all you can hope for. But they've got the players, like they've got the size for SEC football. So,
oh yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So before I get to my last question, so this is for kind of like the guys that are into, anybody that's into the draft. So what are some A&M guys that you think people should keep an eye on that could be possibly NFL draft process?
So, yeah, there's a number of guys. I mean, Weigman is one of them technically. He's a guy that if he finishes out and the 25 season healthy and has a really good season, we could be talking about him as a first-round pick because I know you do draft stuff, so the quarterback class is nowhere near as good. There's nothing against those guys, but it's just nowhere near as good as it was last year. Now, it could look better at the end of the year, but that's obviously he's one of those guys, but it's mainly on the defensive line. Nick Scorton, who I believe I mentioned earlier, who led the Big Ten in sacks last year, could be the best player on A&M's entire team this year, just because he's just a game wrecker. I mean, he's unblockable essentially. If you leave one guy on him. I think he's about 280 at defensive end right now. Just an incredible athlete. He's now, there's a lot of mocks I've seen where he's a top 10 pick. I could see him top 10, top 15 pick if he has a really good season. Shamar Turner, one of A&M's senior, I believe junior, senior defensive tackles. He's been a stalwart. He led A&M in sacks for half the year last year, and he was a guy who could have gone last year, but it was actually smart to come back because he could be a borderline second or third round pick, potentially second round pick. Who else? There's a couple other guys. Trey Zune on the offensive line, left tackle. That's somebody who's been talked as a potential first round pick based on how he plays. He's 6'7", great mover, great hands, great feet. But yeah, there's a lot of talent on this team, and that's the thing. You'll hear more about them throughout the year. Especially there are some guys on the O-line that will get some attention if they play well. But yeah, a lot of it's A&M's defensive line. If that unit does not terrorize at least almost every quarterback this year, I'd be surprised. They're just, it's pretty nasty. So
yeah, it's a pretty stacked defensive line.
It is, yeah. I mean, Elko's that's got to be fun for him. Like coming in his first year, it's like 5-star, 5-star, high 4-star. Like it's nice to have.
So, yeah, he's definitely rubbing his hands together.
He knows what he can do with this team. So yeah.
Absolutely. So my last question is, since it's a Texas road trip, so what are like 3 artists that are on your must playlist?
Yeah, people are they're gonna think I'm some like crazy metal, a heavy metal guy, but I like all music. But yeah, there are 3 albums I listen to every time I'm traveling, but the 3 bands I listen to, and I'll include actually one of the best hip hop artists. I listen to that album over and over. So it's Deftones is one of my favorite bands, one of the best alternative metal bands out there. Deaf Heaven is another band I listen to all the time. I listen to their album Infinite Granite a lot. To be honest, Incubus, one of their first albums, Science, I listen to that all the time. I actually listen to it today. These are just albums that just pump me up and get me ready to cover games. But last one is Nas Illmatic. I will play the crap out of that album over and over and over. It's one of the best hip hop albums of all time. But yeah, I've got pretty diverse taste, but yeah, I just, I like something hard to listen to. It just, for some reason, gives me the mindset of like, not aggressive, but like get through the day, So,
if I said it make you want to put a football helmet on or something?
No, not like smashing my head into like walls or anything, but
So. I get you. I heard a couple of like Deftones and stuff. I have a lot of friends that are into heavy metal. So
it's different. People always ask like, because country music's really big, and I have a lot of friends who listen to like mainstream, like even Taylor Swift and stuff like that. I'm like, that's fine. It's like, I'm gonna name bands you don't know the hell they are, but I mean, like we all like what we like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my main thing about this question. If I want to hear different, like if they're different bands or artists, maybe I'll listen to them while I'm at the gym or something like that.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, no, I always give recommendations to people, and sometimes they come back and go, I hate this. Why did you give this to me? Or they're like, okay, yeah, that's pretty interesting. I'm like, that's the whole point. So it's the whole point of music sharing. But
yeah. So what's the percentage when it comes to like the ones that say I hate this and the ones that are like, oh, I don't
know. Like percentage wise, 60-40. Hate.
60-40.
Say yeah.
Hey, at least you got 40%.
I'm not giving like Slayer. I'm not like, yeah, go listen to this Slayer album, and then yeah, it's really calming, but I don't know.
Appreciate you, Cam, for being on the show.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I let you go, where can they check out Aggies Wire at?
So really, yeah, just type in Aggies Wired at usatoday.com. We're pretty much everywhere. You'll, especially if you're an A&M fan, you're going to see our articles pretty much everywhere. We do daily updates. We do analysis. We do something that people do love that might be going away soon, but it's a lot of lists, a lot of rankings. We're doing a lot of that this month, but going into August, yeah, football coverage just ramps up like crazy starting August 1st. So yeah, Aggies Wired at usatoday.com. We update the website daily, and yeah, we're there for you to give you the information that you wanna hear about, want to read, and yeah, it's sometimes hourly. to be honest with you. So
yeah, and everybody eats up on the writers and stuff. They're trying their best out there.
God. I mean, I don't care. Like, no, if you hate all of us and you disagree, that's the whole point. Then we're winning at our job. Because if you were just like, I agree, it's like, okay, we suck.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, all right. I don't want you to agree with me. Like, so, no, I don't want that. So I want you to argue a little bit and have some different opinions. But
yeah,
it's been great so far. I appreciate every reader out there. If they hate me, know who I am, or whatever, or love me. I mean, that's the whole point. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So next week we'll be back for another show, and it's actually gonna be the rival team, UT. So we got Jonathan Davis from Locked On Longhorns for that. But,
okay.
Yeah. So
cool. Yeah. I'll make sure to listen to that one.
We might end up having having Cam back on this show. Maybe have Jonathan Davis, so we can have a good old UT and A&M rivalry podcast.
We'll see.
You never know, but I appreciate you again, bro.
Yeah, man, it was fun. I had a great time.
Yes, sir. This has been Tacos and Touchdowns. Have a good one. Peace.